Commercial aviation operates as a high-reliability sector, defined by severe operational volatility. Crews manage thousands of passengers daily while navigating strict timelines and unforgiving environments. For flight attendants, this translates into a compounding set of occupational demands. They endure erratic scheduling, absorb complex safety liabilities, and frequently de-escalate difficult passenger behavior in confined spaces. Following the COVID-19 pandemic, these operational pressures intensified. Aviation personnel across the industry reported an acute rise in occupational stress and complex mental health challenges that degraded their capacity to perform. Airlines frequently deploy standard wellness programs, often consisting of passive resources or general health advice to address these issues. The empirical data shows these conventional approaches consistently fail to mitigate specific, high-stakes operational stressors. A new 2026 study by Suinvatin and colleagues provides an empirical counterexample. The researchers focused specifically on a cohort of Thai aviation personnel who were exhibiting high baseline stress levels. The researchers administered a strictly structured 4-week psychological intervention to half the cohort. The results from the post-test data yielded an exceptionally large, statistically significant shift in the participants' mental state. Unchecked occupational stress directly compromises in-flight safety and passenger management. The severity of these risks makes psychological resilience a strictly non-negotiable operational requirement for airlines, rather than a secondary human resources concern. This chart tracks the study's primary finding, perceived stress scores over time. The experimental group, represented by the sharply descending line, experienced a massive drop in stress following the 4-week intervention. The statistical magnitude of this reduction is severe. The analysis recorded a partial eta-squared value of 0.809 for stress reduction, creating a stark divergence from the control group, whose stress levels remained virtually unchanged. This second graph illustrates the study's corresponding secondary finding, composite subjective well-being. Here, the experimental group displays a steep upward trajectory. The effect size for this well-being improvement reached a partial eta-squared of 0.720. In standard behavioral interventions, isolating and generating an effect size exceeding 0.7 is exceptionally rare. The mechanism driving these steep trajectory changes is a targeted psychological capital intervention, or PCI. The researchers explicitly bypassed passive relaxation methods. Instead, they subjected the experimental group to 24 hours of an active, engineered cognitive curriculum. To understand how to achieve and replicate effect sizes over 0.7 in high-stress populations, we have to examine the exact methodologies applied in this 28-day window. The data reclassifies well-being as an engineered, quantifiable organizational asset. To understand why the intervention worked, we have to look at the foundational model of workplace stress, the Job Demands Resources Theory, or JDR. JDR theory views workplace well-being as a delicate balance. On one side are job demands. These are the physical, psychological, and emotional exertions required by a role, the heavy weight of managing crises and emotional labor. In high-reliability sectors like commercial aviation, management cannot simply eliminate these demands. Weather disruptions, medical emergencies, and tight turnaround times are fixed variables. They cannot be reduced without compromising service quality or safety. To counter this, the theory points to the other side of the scale, job resources. These are the factors employees use to manage their demands. When external resources, like scheduling autonomy or extra staffing, are constrained by business realities, organizations must inject internal personal resources to pull the scale back into equilibrium. In the Suinvatin study, the specific personal resource injected into the workforce was psychological capital. By applying JDR theory, human resources departments can shift focus from attempting to eliminate operational stress to systematically engineering the psychological buffers required to withstand it. Psychological capital, or PsyCap, breaks down into 4 explicit, measurable components. Together, they form the acronym HERO. The first sector is hope. This is defined specifically as pathway thinking, the cognitive ability to set clear goals and rapidly generate alternative solutions when a crisis blocks the original plan. Next is efficacy. This is an employee's explicit, measurable belief in their own capacity to execute specific tasks while under pressure. The intervention built efficacy systematically by using mastery experiences, running the flight attendants through repeated emergency simulations to cement their confidence in high-stakes problem-solving. The R stands for resilience. This denotes the rapid capacity to recover, adapt, and return to baseline, or stronger, immediately following adversity. In an aviation environment, resilience is tested daily. It is the mechanic a crew member uses to maintain safety composure after de-escalating a conflict with an unruly passenger. Finally, optimism. This is a trained positive attribution style. It requires the employee to consciously frame operational challenges as temporary learning opportunities rather than permanent insurmountable failures. These four components share one critical psychological distinction. They are state-like. Unlike fixed personality traits, state-like attributes are highly malleable and explicitly open to development. The researchers utilized 24 contact hours of meticulous, face-to-face cognitive training to directly target and elevate these specific traits in their subjects. The HERO framework takes vague concepts of workplace wellness and translates them into rigorous, operational training objectives that produce empirical results. This raises an analytical question. Why did this specific study achieve effect sizes far exceeding previous standalone PsyCap interventions in healthcare or tourism? The first multiplier is its multimodal design. The researchers integrated traditional cognitive reframing exercises with daily mindfulness practices. Mindfulness operates as a cognitive catalyst. By regulating negative emotions, it clears the psychological space necessary for the HERO components to successfully take root. The second and arguably larger multiplier is cultural congruence. The face-to-face training format directly leveraged the collectivist values of the Thai cohort. The curriculum heavily prioritized interdependence, shared goal setting, and peer support exercises. Furthermore, the hierarchical structure of Asian aviation cultures naturally facilitated vicarious learning. Junior attendants were able to rapidly build their own efficacy by modeling the behaviors of senior crew members within the training. Western training models are frequently individualistic, emphasizing personal achievement and autonomy, which often fails to fully capitalize on existing social support networks. Psychological methodologies yield maximum efficacy only when they are strictly aligned with the underlying structural and cultural realities of the workforce executing them. The integrity of these findings is anchored by the study's design. The researchers utilized a quasi-experimental, matched pre-test, post-test control group structure, meticulously ensuring baseline equivalence between both sets of participants before training began. This table details the raw, two-way mixed design ANOVA outputs. The data confirms an undeniable statistical interaction between the training condition and time, with a p-value of less than 0.001. Crucially, the control group exhibited absolutely no significant changes in baseline stress. This confirms that simply accumulating more time on the job does not naturally build psychological resilience. The researchers do note explicit constraints in their work. The study utilized a relatively small sample size of 60 participants and relied on a predominantly female demographic, which requires future cross-cultural and larger-scale testing to validate broader applicability. Despite these constraints, the data establishes a definitive causal link. Structured, targeted psychological training directly causes stress mitigation. These individual psychological gains map directly onto macro-level business outcomes. Targeted PCI training initiates an operational chain reaction, reliably producing elevated psychological capital. This elevated PsyCap acts as a mediator, directly increasing crew engagement. High engagement then serves as an organizational shield, buffering against the costly outcomes of absenteeism and high turnover. The secondary benefits extend directly to the consumer. Resilient, highly engaged crews exhibit superior safety compliance, proactive hazard reporting, and significantly elevated customer service quality. To scale these benefits, future corporate implementations will need to balance academic rigor with operational feasibility, potentially translating the 24-hour academic curriculum into microlearning or mobile delivery formats that fit erratic flight schedules. Cultivating psychological capital provides the foundational strategic investment required to build an agile, safe workforce in volatile global markets.